Good morning. Hi. My name is Kelsey, as Drew said. I am the founder and CEO of Misfit Media, which is hilarious. Do you want to know a secret? I have no employees. No, we do. We have contractors. We have tons of contractors, but nobody full time yet because we're brand new. But I always start off any big speaking session with a little game. You ready to play? Okay. When I say okay, you say all right. Okay. Okay. And when I say all right, you say okay. All right. All right. Okay. All right. I start off that with every single big speaking thing for two reasons. One, clearly you're Minnesotan. There's almost nobody in the front row, so we got to warm you up. And two, it takes me back to my favorite place in the whole wide world, which brings it back to simplicity, which is our theme today. My favorite place in the world is a little school in South Africa in Cape Town called Tembeletu. And it is the only school in the entire Western Cape, which is about the size of 3 states, that will allow disabled children to go to school. It's wild. I have basically grown up speaking about disability my entire life. My parents on the first day of school since I was 5 years old would have me get in front of the class and I would say, "Hi, I'm Kelsey. This is my arm. I was born that way. Does anyone have any questions?" Because kids make fun of what they don't understand, so disabled kids are low-hanging fruit. And they hope that this would help kind of decrease some of the bullying. Jury's out on that. But I've been explaining disability to children for my entire life. And when I went to South Africa for the first time, I was working with an organization that worked with children who had been removed from previously abusive homes. And every single day, these cuties would run up to me and be like, Teacher Kelsey, what happened to your hand? Did the lion eat it? And I was like, no, the lion did not eat it. And then they say, did the shark eat it? And I'd say, no, the shark also did not eat it. Even though for Halloween, I'm going as the surfer that got her arm eaten off by the shark. And my husband's going as the shark. That's not it. And I would explain to them, like, listen, you have brown skin and I have white skin. And you have 10 fingers and I have 8 fingers. And sometimes we look the same and sometimes we look different. And this is just one of those things. And I've been doing that since I was 5 and I'm really good at it. But these kids could not wrap their minds around it. And I went on to find out that the reason they couldn't wrap their minds around it was because if I had been born in South Africa, there's an 80% chance I never would have even gone to kindergarten. There's a 95% chance I never would have finished school. There's a 0.5% chance that I would ever have some form of a job. And a lot of the reason for this is in many cultures, not just South Africa, disability is seen as a curse or demonic possession. So it's a lot of work around human rights. Much to my parents' dismay, I ended up staying not for 6 months, but 5 years. And we worked with organizations that didn't come in and say, here's how to fix things. We worked with local organizations and said, how can we support the work that you're already doing? And I saw some of the worst human rights violations you could ever imagine. And time again for 5 years, I would ask every leader that we were working with, what would be the one thing I could do to most impact this issue? It's an extremely complex issue. And every single person for 5 years told me change the way disabled people are viewed. Because even with our work, we are one of the last considerations for funding because they think that disability-centric projects will never really amount to anything, that these kids are kind of throwaways. We don't even get considered. So change the way that we're viewed, and it'll help us a lot. So I moved back and I did a complete career change and started working in marketing. I don't have a background in marketing. I'm an activist. So I did that, and I did a lot of jobs in the meantime while I built my business and I basically interned, starting completely over. And for the last 10 years, I've worked in marketing because I know that what we see in our culture influences so much of our opinion, right? So I really believe that, okay, there has to be something here. If we can change the way that people view and represent disabled people, society's opinions will start to change. So that's exactly what my company does, Misfit Media. We do education, we do consulting, and we do creative. And I'm not going to do a super long pitch right now, but that's what we do, okay? We're going to talk about why, because I really believe that every single person in the world and in this room can impact the lives of disabled people in some way. It is my superpower. You can give me any job and give me 30 seconds and I will think of a way that disability inclusion can apply to your job. I've done it for a plumber, so I can do it for you. So before we're gonna get into some like a tiny, what I'm about to go through is usually 90 minutes. I talk fast, but I can't talk that fast to fit it all in. So it's gonna be like a teeny tiny teaser about why this is important and how representation and how people have viewed disabled people over the last couple of centuries has shaped the civil and human rights crisis that disabled people are now facing. So we're gonna do that for about 5 to 10 minutes. It's gonna be fun for me. And I promise you, you're gonna be uncomfortable, okay? You know that feeling when you've got like that like aunt or uncle at family dinner and they say something real cringy and you're like, I know you don't mean that, but Jesus, don't say that. You're gonna feel that way, but it's gonna be about you, and I'm really sorry about that. So we always start off with a breathing exercise. And if you've never done this in a presentation before, don't worry. I used to be a yoga teacher before chronic pain destroyed my life, so I'll guide you through it. So close your eyes for a second. Place your feet on the floor. Ooh, you're good at taking direction. Take a big breath in through your nose for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Release for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now open your eyes. Okay. Notice the feeling of stillness that you have. And when moments and defenses kind of rise up, because they will, we're all programmed that way, come back to this breathing exercise. This is not designed to shame you. Every single person has been raised in an ableist society, so we all have elements of ableism in us. And if you feel uncomfortable and kind of like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that was bad, I love that. Do you know why? Why? Job security. So we're going to get into this. We're going to look at, we're just going to go through some really basic stuff about what disability is and language terms, because I know in the Q&A, you're going to ask me otherwise. So I just told you I'm putting this in the beginning and we're cutting off 2 minutes from questions. So what is disability? The CDC defines disability as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. We also extend that to include neurodivergence, in case that wasn't clear, so autism, ADHD. Basically, if it impacts your life in a massive way, it's a disability. If it's something that you're struggling with, and mental health can be a disability at times, it really depends on how it impacts you, right? So that's what a disability is. And then the question I always get is, how do I talk about disability? So we're going to do it right now. Person first or identity first? Person first, disability. It's like person with a disability, right? People with autism. Person with a disability puts distance and separation between a person and their disability. It's most commonly used in corporate or media settings. So oftentimes people will use this term for themselves if they're disabled, if they're like, they understand that just saying that you're disabled can provoke some like negative connotations because of the society that we live in. So some people use it, some people don't. I think there's validity in both. The other is disabled person. It illustrates that disability is an important part of many people's identities and they do not want to separate themselves from it. No matter how hard you try, you can't make me a not disabled person. That's kind of the thought behind it, okay? There are other ways of talking about disability as well that our culture uses, like special needs, differently abled. Don't use those unless a disabled person specifically asks you, and here's why. We have sociology studies that prove that using euphemisms to talk about disability actually increases stigmatization. Also, we've asked you not to. You don't know that, but they have, the disability for 50 years has been organizing and saying, please use the word disabled. Because, I mean, even without the sociology study, let's think about it. We avoid saying words that we think are bad, right? So if you're avoiding disability, it's kind of putting that idea in people's brains that it's a bad thing. It's not. Disabled people are the best. I just blanked out an F word for you, so. The next thing we're going to talk about is implicit bias. Has anybody heard of this term before? Cool, awesome, I'm in good company, I like you. The unconscious attitudes that we have towards people based on our preconceived notions. So the idea, if you feel uncomfortable saying disability, that's an example of implicit bias. That's understandable because society has painted disability as a really bad thing for a really long time. So you might have this implicit bias that says like, oh, I don't want to say that. That might be offensive to them. I don't want to do that. That's an implicit bias, okay? Then we've got another one called systemic ableism. Has anybody heard of systemic racism or systemic homophobia? Yes, okay. It exists for ableism too. 90% of companies have a plan for DEI, but only 4% include disability within them, which is why we're talking about this really quick. So systemic ableism is the discrimination against people, disabled people embedded into our laws, policies, institutions, values, and norms, right? So many people don't know this, but the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, was only passed 30 years ago. So 30 years ago, you didn't have to have wheelchair accessible bathrooms, you didn't have to have wheelchair accessible buildings, you didn't have to have ramps, and there's actually still a lot of loopholes for that ADA document. So it shows up as like, these are built into our society, okay? Let's go on to the next one. I'm not kidding. I've had people here that have been to my presentations. This is usually an hour, so I'm just really cruising through. So if you're like, what? Just email me, I'll send you a free one. This is an illustration that I use called a funnel of oppression. And it's something that I use in every single training. Basically, it starts off as an implicit bias that just goes unchecked. And every single one of us builds systems into our everyday lives for efficiency, right? How you get to work is a system. Do you use the bus? Do you drive a car? Who built those roads? How you get your groceries is a system, right? Like, how do you get into the building? Are there stairs? Are there ramps? There's so much systemic thinking, right, that goes on in our everyday lives. When systems are not built with disabled people in mind, then that implicit bias of like, oh, disabled people aren't really capable or they're not here, we don't need to prioritize them, kind of just gets reinforced over and over because they're not participating in everyday society. So those implicit biases can't change. And then those people who have more incorrect, harmful, implicit biases go on to create more systems. So let's use an example. Most people think that disabled people just kind of stumbled upon bad representation. So the disability population is 26% of the population. That's surprising anyone? It's a lot of people. 26% of the population. One thing I always say is it is not a matter of if, but when you or someone you love becomes disabled. That is not a threat, it's a promise. It will happen, right? Like, it's gonna happen at some point, either your parent or your sibling. Somebody's gonna acquire either a short-term or a long-term disability. It will impact all of us. So 25% or 26% of the population, we only make up 3.1% of total representation. And 80% of that, according to the Center for Storytellers and Scholars, is problematic. A lot of people think we just stumbled upon that, like, oh, people just don't think about it. No, we've been conditioned to think that way. Has anybody heard of something called a freak show? Oh, yeah. So people think of them as kind of like spooky, icky carnivals, right? Like just kind of weird. But why were they spooky? They lined up disabled people, put them in a room, charged people money to go point at, stare at, laugh at, and gawk at disabled people for entertainment. Those people went on to create systems. One of the systems they made is something that many people don't even know exists, which is called the Ugly Laws. Has anybody heard of that? No. The Ugly Laws were municipal laws that forbade any disabled or quote-unquote unsightly person from being seen in public. The last of these was only overturned in the 1970s. So yes, this goes back centuries, but it's also a very recent part of our cultural memory. Like the ADA, I was born without the ADA being around. It's really recent. A lot of people are like, oh, we have the ADA, everything's fine. I have really bad news for you. It is not fine. Over 80% of disabled people are or underemployed. It is legal to pay disabled people less than a minimum wage in 27 states. Disabled people are more than 7 times likely to experience violence or sexual assault. The claims that we make only have a 3% chance of being prosecuted and investigated. Disabled people have, oh yeah, exactly, it's on there, sorry, I already said that. I thought I had another one. Those are the main ones we're gonna focus on. If you want a lot more, I can give you a lot more. It's grim, okay? It's grim. And knowing how much of what gets like even brought up in legislation or what gets brought up in how we create systems, if 90% of companies are focusing on DEI, but disability is not mentioned in them, that's a really big issue because people aren't thinking about it as like a part of the bigger picture, okay? So that being said, we're gonna have some fun. So we're gonna watch a few little clips. Are you ready? It's like movie time. Unfortunately, I don't have like the roller out TV like you had in school growing up. Uh, but we're gonna watch a few. We're gonna do a little tiny call and response. Not much. We don't have much time. Again, 90 minutes into 20. Uh, we're gonna watch them and we'll see what you think. Okay?
Okay. All right.
Let's go. What's on? Okay. There we go.
Kids with autism sometimes are overlooked. It makes us feel important that she sees them. Miss Joanne always has the brightest smile. She makes them feel at home.
I asked him, what is it that you need today, Joseph?
Free people speak explore.
We're friends, and I love him.
She talks to him directly, just making sure he's heard. It makes his day a lot easier.
If I can make him smile every day, I will.
Overflowing.
Okay. Oh, 3 of you got it. We don't have time to do that again. You guys gotta get on it. Okay. There we go. Okay, okay, these kids I used to work with, they spoke Xhosa, and so like with very different languages. So when they were all going around, that's why we came up with okay, all right, was when they were rambunctious. I don't want to be like, listen to me. So what do we think? What did that make you feel? Did you think it was great? Did you think it was inclusive? You give me yours. I'll give you mine. And if you're wrong, remember, job security. I love that. So raise your hand who's brave enough to say what they thought. And not just Michelle. Sorry. You can. She's my hype woman. Okay. Who else? One person.
I can.
Okay.
I'll tell you, I felt firm that they have this genuine connection, but then I also thought, well, what's the context of this video? Why did they produce this? Where were they putting it out? Why did they cast these people? How did they find these people? There's a lot of questions that I have.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? It's not that scary. Anyone? 3? Lauren. Next time we'll grab you.
Just that she's calling out her being special for treating him like a regular human being.
Yeah. That's it. Oh, we got 2. Now everyone's okay. In the back, I'll grab you next. You probably know because I know you're close with your daughter. So she's probably telling you all kinds of stuff behind there. Yeah.
The fact that there was a Chick-fil-A logo at the start, and immediately after, like the heartwarming thing was said, it just left sort of a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah. 100p. Yeah, no doubt. So here's what I hear with that, right? Is like, you know what? These videos, these red couch videos, are Chick-fil-A's like PR push, right? They share inspiring stories that happen in their businesses. And I mean, it shouldn't be, Chick-fil-A is not exactly known for not being problematic. So, but the reality is they're making a big deal out of her treating an autistic customer like a customer. She gave him his meal. She gave him what he asked for. He paid her. She smiled at him. That's really big of her to smile at an autistic person. Basically, like, Chick-fil-A thought this was a good move. They spent money on it. They spent money on the production. They spent money on putting it on TV. They did media buys. They thought this was really good. But this should be the line in the sand. This should be the, like, you don't get my money unless you do this. Why are you acting like this is a big deal? And when this came out, if you look on their like social media, it's like, oh my gosh, so heartwarming, so amazing. It reinforces these implicit biases that like the bar's on the freaking floor for disabled people for how you get to treat us, right? Like, this is inspiring. Like, imagine an ad making a big deal out of treating a woman or someone from another race or someone from the LGBTQIA community as a customer. Will we say that's heartwarming? I don't think so. So good. I'm not even gonna do call and response. I was trying so hard to hide my reaction. It's so good. No notes. I use this in every training I teach, and this commercial has won them so many awards and so much business. It is endorsed by every single disabled person I have ever met for many reasons. Basically, they just knocked it out of the park. There's no stereotypes, stigmas, or tropes at all. They worked, and the reason I believe is because they worked really closely with disabled people behind the scenes to create not only their commercials, but their products. So they've actually done something that benefits the community, and then they let the community tell that story for themselves. They don't center themselves. They don't say, oh, look at us, we're so good. They don't do that. They're just like, oh yeah, this is disabled people should be able to access the world, and here's what we can do to help. It's a really beautiful like tone, positioning, and then I mean, Apple's creative is always going to knock it out of the park, right? So that's that one. But you're like, okay, but I don't make commercials. Don't worry. Like I said, I did it for a plumber. I can do it for you. We're gonna do it 2 more.
First man in
This is the
Intervals
Olympics.
to win both 1,500 meters and 5,000 meters titles in the same Olympics.
I heard the announcer say, Gada Shoah of Syria, the winner of the gold medal.
Okay, that's the Olympics. Pretty standard Olympic content. Let's look at the Paralympics.
Back is hurting from the chair I'm sitting on. Where's the Tylenol? If I lay down flat on the floor, it usually kind of fixes it. Tony Danza from Who's the Boss says, A-O-A.
Can't go over it, we can't go under it. Oh no, we got to go through it.
That's the actual Paralympics account. Yeah. Full real. Yeah, it's bad. And this is an example of just because an organization is disability centric does not mean it does good disability communications, right? Is why I don't specialize in accessibility. I'm never gonna be a good, like, let me make your website read, like, or a screen reader. I'm not that. I do communications. And so this is a really great example of somebody who doesn't understand all of the nuances surrounding disability in an organization that technically doesn't understand it. You know, most disability-centric organizations are actually led by non-disabled people. This is why it's really problematic and why you need to work with the community. And I am so excited for that documentary. I heard really great things, and I don't know where you are. You're over in this area somewhere. I've heard great things, and I know you work with the community, so I'm really excited to watch it. Last one. Okay, I can go back. The last one, just in case your kids were involved in the story that I'm about to share, it's for like PR, media, news examples. If your kids were involved or you know somebody who was involved, what they did was amazing. They gave no notes examples of what allyship should look like for all people, but the media coverage is trash. So let's look at it.
There are few things in this world more.
All right. Now the story is amazing. Kids are amazing. But you open it up with saying there's nothing more powerful than a child with a dream. Do you know what's more powerful than a child with a dream? A law. A policy. The moral of the story should be like, wow, kids can dream. It should be, why the hell are 3rd graders fundraising for this? Why aren't there systemic barriers to prevent this from happening? Those kids should be playing with Roblox. They should not be doing this. Like, they should be playing with toys and playing with their friends. This is the failure of adults building systems. This is not just something that popped up and kids had to help. This is a systemic issue. And when we paint systemic issues as just like, oops, cutesy stories, it detracts us from change. So, like I said, I can do it for any job. There's just some categories. So if you're an arts teacher, like, well, how can I just do an arts project about the disability rights movement? Teach your kids about Judy Heumann. If you're like, well, I just do graphic design. Have you learned about accessibility? Have you learned about like how things really look and how to like position things? Or even if I just manage social media, okay. But are you sure that the inspiring stories you're sharing aren't actually inspiration porn? It's really applicable to every single person's position in here. And I believe we're here for a purpose. And I'm not going to waste my life just making brands money. I'm not going to. You can if you want. I'm not going to. And if you're on my team, we're getting t-shirts. And then in the meantime, let's keep it simple. So I'm turning it into a little mnemonic device. I'm going to cruise through this. I'm sure I'm overtime and I'm really sorry. If you need to leave, I don't blame you. S is for self-reflection. So ask yourself, what is your role here? Like both, how have I perpetuated this? Because again, I'm very sorry to tell you, but you have. Because I have. Everyone has. We're built in an ableist society. Even disabled people. We have internalized ableism in us. And what can you do? What can your company do? And how can I help? Think about those things. I don't have an answer for you right now because I don't know what you do, but think about them. The I stands for implicit bias training and also intersectionality. But any good implicit bias training is going to teach about intersectionality. I'm a white middle-class woman. My voice is not the only one you should be hearing about this topic. But talk about systemic ableism and how the many ways it shows up. Most people don't even realize it's legal to pay us less than minimum wage in 27 states. Implicit bias, disability history, stereotypes, stigmas, and tropes. Really learn about it. Dig your teeth into it. Because if you don't, you're going to create shit like Chick-fil-A. I have to do a little soft pitch. It's called Misfit Media Online Retainer. Basically, you get to ask me any question you want. We offer it, but if you don't work with us, I don't care. I am, believe it or not in this business to make a bunch of money. I was a preschool teacher while I built this business. We just want to help you. And if you cannot afford us, we will give you our on-demand stuff for free. Like, truly, I am in this to help build a better world for disabled peoples, not just build the biggest company I can, okay? So we have lots of options there. Thank you. Then planning and production, and I kept this kind of marketing focused, but it applies to everything. Your lesson plans, your planning for what art you're gonna put in your museum. Everything needs a plan, because if we don't, we're conditioned to not include disabled people. So you have to put roadblocks in your project management or your planning to make sure you're thinking about, is our site accessible? Have we proactively been mindful of access needs? Is intersectionality prioritized? Are we sure this, whatever we're doing, isn't going to perpetuate tropes? Ella's leveraged the community. So just like Apple did, get us to sing your praises. Because if you sing your praises, you're going to look real bad. For sure, okay? So do PR pitches, like really work with the community. And then E is to expand. So I don't have a favorite client. I don't. I have two. But one of them, I'm not sure if I can explicitly say it, but they always really hit the target on their inclusivity measures. And they really just, they've got a goal and they always hit that bullseye. And the first time I worked with them, it was a really small production where they needed like 4 disabled people cast. Over the next year, we worked together and we're doing another project for 26 disabled people being cast. So it's amazing to see like what started off as 4 has now gone to 26. And they want to do it in their other departments, which is pretty cool. So always be thinking about what else could we do? Because if you build a better world for disabled people, everyone wins. GPS was originally a disability accommodation. You know those cuts in the sidewalk where you like wheel your bike up on? Those were originally a disability accommodation. We literally had the longest sit-in in our nation's history for 26 days to get you those things. So you're welcome. You build a better world for disabled people, and it's gonna build a better world for everyone. So, where are you? If anybody thinks that this doesn't matter, that's totally fine. But if you think it does matter, pull out your phone. Thank you. If you're not, I'm gonna look away, but I know who you are. And you're gonna scan this QR code because I would bet the remainder of my left arm that most of you are at the S, right? And I can't promise you that I'm going to be the best person to guide you in this. If you're a plumber, I'm not going to be the best person to work with you one-on-one. But if there's something I can help you with or direct you in the right direction of who should you talk to, I'm here for you. So you're going to give me your email. You're going to talk to me. And if you want to learn more about this, this will automatically sign up for my email, sorry. But we do lots of either free or really cheap events all the time to help really expand it for that implicit bias and everything else. So thank you for being here. I don't take this lightly. I can't do this myself. I am one person, and 26% of our population has a disability. And it's a huge civil and human rights crisis. I'm going to burn out if I try. I need people like you who will use the power and the privilege that they have to build a better world for disabled people. And those who create content or art or media create culture. So you can do this. And I appreciate you so much for being here and listening to me. I'm probably way over. I'm so sorry. You can give your boss my email and I'll write you get out of work. No. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm not sure I hand the mic to you.